Alright, so we have a thread, and it's in regards to belittling people's traumas. The OP presents a quote that I've definitely seen before. The quote says, someone who drowns in 7 feet of water is just as dead as someone who drowns in 20 feet of water. Stop comparing traumas. Stop belittling you or anyone else's trauma because it wasn't as bad as someone else's. This isn't a competition. We all need support and recovery. I want to make clear that I completely agree with this quote, that nobody should be belittling anyone else's trauma, because, like, I definitely believe that anyone who's gone through any trauma, like, trauma is trauma, you know, like, it's how something impacts you, and if it impacts you, you know, really, really horribly, like, that's completely valid. It's, you know, because of, like, the experiences that you went through, that you had to go through, that these things impact you the way that they do, and it's totally valid to, you know, feel however you do about whatever, no matter how big or small it seems, compared to other people. I, like, definitely feel that way. All that being said, like, I I do think that there, cause, like, I'll just kind of share my own experience, cause, like, I've had to deal with a lot of different stuff in my life, and, like, I grew up in a dysfunctional family, you know, like, I'm neurodivergent. I, you know, like, had to deal with a lot of, like, bullying in school. Like, I couldn't make friends easily because of, like, audio processing disorder, and, you know, neurodivergency in general. And, like, the friends I did make, you know, hurt me more times than not. And, like, because they turned out not to be real friends, and I was kind of a laughing stock in my family. Like, you know, are there, like, the thing is, like, society, you know, has, like, things that, like, there's this sort of sense of objectivity of where, like, society might argue that there are definitely things that I could have gone through that would be worse than what I actually did. So I know that, you know, by any scale you use, I definitely did not have the worst life. But, like, there comes a point, I go to an affluent school, and, like, a lot of these kids, you know, in order for somebody to be successful, like, chances are they have a good support system, and, you know, they had, like, a good background themselves in most cases. Like, definitely not perfect, but they had a strong background, you know. They, like, a lot of them had grew up with, you know, secure financial support, you know. A lot of them grew up going to good schools. A lot of them grew up with parents who, you know, were more likely to put too much expectation on the kid, which is not good, but they were more likely to put too much expectation on the kid rather than, you know, not putting enough, like my parents did. My parents just expected me to pass, but as far as, like, you know, like, making sure I prepared for college, that wasn't really something they did. You know, they didn't exactly believe in me. And, like, again, I know it could have been way worse, and in many ways I was lucky that I didn't have parental pressure, you know, weighing down on me. Like, all that to say, like, on average, though, like, all the people at my school have their own traumas, okay? Like, all of them have dealt with horrible stuff in their past. When I say that, you know, like, they didn't have to deal with the stuff I had to deal with. Like, I had to deal with, like, more stuff than your average, like, middle-class American. That seems to, like, get to them because, like, you know, they suddenly feel insecure about their own trauma, you know, like they suddenly feel insecure about their own background. And that's not really what I'm trying to say, is that that's not really my place to like belittle how I feel, because the thing is, like, when I was growing up, like, I was the one kid that people ostracized because I was so different. That wasn't something that many kids, that wasn't something I saw many kids go through, okay? Like, most kids weren't neurodivergent growing up. Most kids had parents that were, most kids had families that were a bit more, you know, stable. Like, most kids, you know, had parents that they could actually talk to about their problems, or some guardian they could talk to about their problems. I didn't have that. And, like, you know, it's complicated. Like, I don't want to sit here and say I had it worse than other people, but I do want to say that, you know, some people, you know, if you do kind of stack the, you know, the things that people have to go through, like, some people do have to deal with more than others. And I think that that shouldn't invalidate, like, other people's struggles. Like, just cause like, cause there's nothing like, you know, growing up the way I did, constantly being ostracized, isolated, you know, treated like lesser than whatever peer group I was in. And then, like, finally getting into college after dealing with the whole storm, like almost a decade of, like, you know, setbacks, and, you know, having to, like, you know, basically pull myself up by the bootstraps, physically and emotionally. There's nothing like going through all that and trying to express, you know, how much harder you feel life was for you compared to a lot of other people. There's nothing about trying to express that at the most basic level and getting told off because, like, there's no freaking way that, you know, that's okay to say because it invalidates, you know, other people. Like, suddenly, like, your problems don't seem as bad when you're so determined to, like, deny the depths of my own feelings. Like, I'll try to give an example here. Like, if you're neurodivergent, there are just issues that you will have to deal with that neurotypical people will not have to deal with. And I want to emphasize that the poster in the OP is right, that, you know, everyone has their own traumas, and comparing traumas is like comparing apples and oranges. That's definitely true. It's just like, when you, like, the way I've seen that mentality be used, though, like, people use it to act like, you know, like, they have gone through the same amount of stuff as, like, they use it to kind of act like they've gone through, you know, the same number of stuff as, like, anybody else. And, like, the result of that is, like, you lose the ability to, like, you know, be able to empathize with people. Like, you lose the ability to hear somebody who has gone through, like, a rougher reality than you might have, and be able to, like, you know, sit with them with that, you know? Because, like, people want to act like, you know, they can automatically just empathize with people. They want to act like they can automatically sympathize with people because they want to act like, you know, them, like, losing their favorite sweater is the same as somebody else losing a dog. Like, again, you know, it's definitely apples and oranges, but, like, it becomes problematic when, like, you lose your ability to, like, deal with situations when people have, in fact, dealt with things that you never had to? Like, I always ask, and I haven't really seen a good answer for this that I remember. Like, I always ask, like, if it's, not okay to, like, compare people's traumas, then why do we talk about privilege? Because that's just a societal comparing of trauma. Like, if somebody has white privilege, I mean, they don't, like, objectively, it means that they don't have to deal with certain situations, certain life experiences that non-white people deal with because of their skin color. It's just like a guarantee that people have placed upon this person. And, like, that's why, I can't really, in this society where we don't want to compare traumas, I can't blame white people for getting mad about the assumption of white privilege, the assumption that, they had things easy, or, like, they didn't have to, like, suffer as much because they're white. Like, just because someone, didn't have to deal with racism does not mean that they didn't have to deal with all sorts of other stuff getting in the way of their success, of their mental health, like, doesn't mean they grew up in a place where, like, they weren't, afraid that they might get hurt or, killed for some other reason. Like, if you don't want to compare people's traumas, then literally there's, like, little or no more use for the privilege discourse, because, if we're not going to compare, because privilege is strictly a comparison. Like, you didn't have to deal with this thing, so your life was objectively better in this way. Like, that, that is comparison of trauma. Like, that is a comparison of level of trauma. Like, and I don't know, in my experience, I mean, like, people, because they don't want to, like, deal with the idea that, somebody's had to deal with a bunch in their own life, because of that, like, they, like, yeah, they just don't want to sit with somebody who actually has dealt with more. Like, they don't even want to, people can kind of tell, like, who's, been fucked up more by life, and they don't want to sit with that person. They don't want to, try to engage with that person, because they don't know how to, like, empathize with that person, because they've lived their life with people trying to, overcome their insecurity that, they didn't go through enough. Like, I don't want people to go through, like, much at all, Like, you should be able to build some sense of resiliency, but, like, I don't want people's lives to be suffering, the way my life was, or, like, I want people to have as little suffering in their life as possible. I hope my life has as little suffering as possible. Like, I hope I can overcome whatever challenges come my way, better than I've been able to in the past. But, like, it's just that, when you try to, like, it's not my job to, like, try to belittle, like, how to try and, like, belittle or choke down the strong feelings I feel about my past, and, like, having, how I felt about having to watch other people so easily do the things that I struggle so much with, and I know it was easier for them because they would make fun of me, they would put me down actively, even in college. At when I was 26, I had a bunch of, like, 20, 19, 18-year-olds just putting me down because I couldn't understand things that they found, like, super easy, and they were telling me that, they just cared about getting 100s instead of 95s, because otherwise they'd be like me, worried about whether or not they pass whatever class. I had multiple people tell me that. You can't tell me that, like, everyone struggles with the same amount of like hardship, because I've had multiple people at the school I'm at right now tell me flat out that, I deal with more, that like my emotional outbursts is just like, signification that like I just deal with more in life. Like, they weren't doing that to help me. They were doing that to just kind of like, put their hands in the air, like, I don't know how to deal with you. Like, fine, but you know how you can help? By acknowledging that we are different. By like acknowledging that you are able to kind of look down on me. Like, they want to, like, people at my school want to be able to like look down on me, and like, but then also act like they are also in the same pit. Like, I never, or worse, like, I never know, whether or not these people that, I feel so put down by are in the same pit as me, are dealing with as much as I am, even though, like, they literally make, I don't know if you call it making fun or just like pick on me for struggling more than they do. Like, I don't get it, and and I know that like it's not just the people in my school who like have this kind of hypocritical way of thinking. It's other people too, like it's kind of a problem that exists in the world. It's a very complicated problem, because I want to emphasize for like the third time at least that I'm not here to put down people and say like, oh, you haven't gone through much, you haven't gone through that much. It's just like, it's really telling when I look for support, and like the first thing that comes out of whoever's mouth when I just give a little bit of information of what I'm dealing with is like, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is like, oh, everyone's dealing with a hard time, it's COVID, okay? Everybody's struggling. To a degree, yes, but like, if COVID is like your biggest problem, unless it's like left like, permanent scars because like you worked in a hospital during COVID, or like you had family members pass during COVID, or you lost a job during COVID or something like that. Unless you had something like that happen to you, like, there's no way to, like, the fact that when COVID ends, that your suffering will go down drastically, while there are people who grew up being like emotionally or physically abused or neglected, or dealing with the consequences of being neurodivergent or LGBT when they were just trying to enjoy their lives, like living the best way they knew how. When you have the gall to like say, oh, it's just COVID, just being completely insensitive to like people who have to deal with like a lot of like long-term struggles like that, and then have the gall to also say like, oh, everyone's dealing with their own trauma, blah 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 blah. That's when I can't roll with you, okay? Like, I just can't roll with that. I just think that is actually, a thought process that is full of privilege, and a thought process that is very ignorant, silly, blind, just incredibly just foolish, okay? Like, I have a word on the tip of my tongue, I can't think of it. I think it's narrow-minded is probably the best word I have for it. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Like, I'm kind of getting a headache. It's kind of an emotional topic that I've really had to like wrestle with this semester, just dealing with like my peers at my school, like having to deal with like 2 years before this of like my peers looking down on me because of how much I was struggling and feeling like they were judging me. And when I tried to explain like why, when I tried to like give a perspective of why things are so much harder for me than them, you know, like I get flack because I try to like, you know, I tried to like explain things. Like I tried to just say like I've had to deal with more than your average person, even though like these people were looking down on me, you know, they still have the gall to like act like they had to deal with just as much. Like, okay boy, okay girl, okay, you know, okay bro, like I'm sorry. It's just that stuff's so dumb. But let me, after 17 or so minutes of ranting, let me look at the one response that this thread has. This person said, I love it when people call me lazy. I put in 110% effort but get 22% achievement, but someone else puts in 70% effort and gets 60% achievement. Life sucks. That person may or may not have ADHD. Like that, you know, like, because that just is a quote definitely from the mind of someone with ADHD, where like, you know, we get called lazy. I too have ADHD. We get called lazy, but like really we're putting in all of this effort, just as much effort as you, sometimes even more, oftentimes even more, but we get a lot less than what you get out of putting, you know, half the effort we put in. Like it's not to, we don't say that kind of stuff to put you down. We say that stuff because that's the reality, and it's just not a reality you can imagine because it's never been your reality, or it's so rarely your reality to have to put in that much effort to get so little done. So like, there you go. Anyway, I'm done with this. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think about this topic? I always love to hear your opinions, but especially with this, I definitely want to hear opinions. Comment below this video, let me know. Like and subscribe if you like my deep dives. And thank you so much for watching, and see you next time, whenever that is. Thank you. See ya.